Welcome, Sip&Talkers.
You jumped the gun again. You're supposed to wait for the intro line.
I know. Just excited to get started.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to Sip&Talk.
And today we are diving into a topic that is just, well, it's got a lot of fireworks.
It really does. One of the hottest topics in international news right now revolves around a Japanese politician, a member of parliament named Seki Hei. He announced he's going to visit Taiwan in early 2026.
And he didn't just announce it, he basically threw down a gauntlet. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, if I can get into Taiwan, it proves Taiwan is an independent country.
And let's just say that the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not take that well. The reaction was explosive is probably the right word.
Oh, explosive for sure. Did you see the press conference video? The spokesperson Lin Jian, his whole demeanor just shifted. It went from this calm, bureaucratic posture straight to, like, pure anger mode.
Yeah, you could see it in real time. And honestly, it brings up a bigger question. I mean, have you noticed how intense their reaction was this time? We're used to hearing things like resolutely oppose or playing with fire.
Right, the standard diplomatic playbook stuff.
But this time, Lin Jian looked straight at the cameras and called Seki Hei scum. He said he was this kind of scum and that his ugly words and deeds are not worthy of comment.
Wow.
Scum. That word say in Mandarin, showing up in an official diplomatic setting. Isn't that a little, over the top?
That's exactly it. And that's what we really want to dig into today, this Seki Hei phenomenon. Because for Beijing, you have to understand, he isn't just some random Japanese politician.
No, not at all. His entire identity is a trigger.
Exactly. His background is so sensitive. He was born in Sichuan, China in 1962, went to Peking University, one of the top schools. Then he moved to Japan.
And the critical turning point was 1989. After the Tiananmen Square incident, he said he had a spiritual break with the Chinese Communist Party. He ended up becoming a naturalized Japanese citizen.
So in Beijing's narrative, in their logic, this isn't just a political disagreement. This is what they frame as betrayal of the motherland.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So it's like
Right.
It's like an ex who doesn't just badmouth you after a breakup, but then makes a point of bringing their new partner to walk right past your front door just to prove a point.
That is a perfect analogy. It's a public demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we see this as a dual collision. It's identity politics crashing head-on with geopolitics.
And Seki Hei is new to this role, right? He was only just elected in July of 2025.
Right, to the Japanese House of Councilors, part of the Japan Innovation Party. But his plan for this trip has two very, very clear goals.
The first is the official reason, the geopolitical substance. He wants to talk about security in the Taiwan Strait, defense cooperation between Japan and Taiwan.
But it's the second goal that's the real genius move here.
It is. He's using his own status, the fact that he's been sanctioned by China and is banned from entering, as a kind of logical weapon. He's making the case that if I can enter Taiwan but not China, what does that tell you?
Which is probably why the spokesperson just sort of short-circuited. I mean, when your whole argument falls apart, what do? You resort to insults.
But does that kind of name-calling actually help them, diplomatically speaking? I'm not so sure.
Well, before we get into that, we should probably do a quick fact check, because when this all went down, there was a lot of confusion in the media.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So, first things first, let's be really clear about who said what. When this story first broke, a lot of outlets were kind of fuzzy on where the aggressive language was coming from.
And that's a critical detail. We need to be crystal clear with you. The insults, the moralizing language, scum, not worthy of comment, that did not come from Taiwan's government.
Not at all. That was exclusively from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Lin Jian in Beijing.
Taiwan's actual response was, the complete opposite. It was professional, it was welcoming, and frankly, pretty strategic.
Absolutely. Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs went on X, which used to be Twitter, and replied directly to Seki Hei in Japanese. They thanked him for his long-term support for their democracy and for engaging in regional security dialogue.
And Seki Hei's response?
He just confirmed he would proceed absolutely according to plan. So what you see is this perfect little exchange. You have two parties calmly confirming their shared interests,
while the third party's just shouting from the sidelines.
Exactly. Now, let's get into the logic test itself, because it's so simple but so effective. I've started calling it the physical experiment of sovereignty.
Walk us through that. What is the formula here, and why is it so damaging to Beijing's narrative?
Okay, so the core premise that Beijing operates on is, let's say, A implies B. A is the premise. Taiwan is an inalienable part of China.
Right.
And B is the logical consequence. Therefore, China exercises effective sovereign jurisdiction over Taiwan. It has control.
Okay, makes sense. Now, Seki Hei introduces a new variable. CC is the fact. I am officially sanctioned by Beijing. I am banned from entering China, Hong Kong, and Macau. Then he proposes an action. D. I am going to fly to Taiwan with my Japanese passport and get a Taiwanese immigration stamp.
And if action D is successful,
Then B must be false. If he can freely enter Taiwan, it demonstrates that Taiwan is outside of China's effective jurisdiction. It's a real-world fact that completely contradicts their political claim.
it's a beautiful, simple piece of political theater, because what's the most visible symbol of sovereignty a state has?
Border control.
Border control. Who you let in and who you keep out. If the very person you've officially banned can just walk right into territory you claim is yours, your claim looks, well, pretty weak.
It's a structural contradiction, and he's forcing them to confront it publicly. You can't overstate how powerful that is. You can argue about history, you can manipulate language, but a stamp and a passport is a hard physical fact. So that brings us back to his identity. You mentioned the traitor label. Why does that specific part of his story make the reaction so much more volatile?
Because he represents a kind of ultimate psychological threat to their system. He's actually the first sitting Japanese Diet member to be sanctioned by China. They sanctioned him in September 2025, specifically for his anti-CCP activism.
But it goes deeper than just being an activist.
Much deeper. It's the label Han Jian, which means traitor to the Han people, or traitor to the motherland. The implication isn't just political disagreement, it's framed as a moral, almost ethnic betrayal.
And his life story is the perfect narrative for that. He was educated in their elite system, and then he didn't just leave. He became a vocal critic, an advocate for Taiwanese democracy, a Japanese citizen.
And he became influential in a neighboring country that has a very complicated history with China. He embodies a successful defection from their system, and that's something they cannot tolerate.
So does this betrayer's label effect, as we're calling it, actually change how they talk?
Oh, absolutely. You can track it. When the MFA is talking about a foreign critic, say an American or a European official, the language is very formalized. It's gross interference, firmly opposed, that sort of thing.
The state-to-state language.
Right. But when they're talking about a critic of Chinese origin, even one who's now a citizen of another country, the tone shifts dramatically. It becomes personal, moralistic. They use words like scum, clown. It's treated like an internal wound, an attack on national pride, and they feel they have to rhetorically destroy the person to stop others from following that path.
Which makes total sense from a domestic politics perspective. The outrage is meant to satisfy the audience at home that sees him as a turncoat, and it conveniently masks the fact that they are politically powerless to actually stop him from going to Taiwan.
And we can't forget the context of Japanese politics here. Seki Hei's election victory in 2025 was a big deal. He beat a pro-China opponent. Many observers see that as part of a broader shift among Japanese voters toward a more hardline stance on China.
So his visit isn't just a personal stunt. It's a reflection of a bigger geopolitical pivot happening in Japan.
That's right. From the perspective of Japan and Taiwan, this trip is about practical planning. It's about deepening substantive relations and creating a back channel for security dialogue.
But from Beijing's perspective, it's nothing but a provocation. It's political showmanship by Japanese right-wing forces designed to attack the one China principle.
And it's just fascinating, isn't it? The exact same event, one guy booking a plane ticket, is seen as either essential cooperation or inflammatory theater. It all depends on your ideological starting point. And it's that clash that leads to this complete logical breakdown.
All right, so we've got the facts straight. We know who said what and why Seki Hei is such a lightning rod. Let's dig deeper into the response itself. Because when the logic fails, the emotion just floods in.
Yeah, it's that childhood argument analogy we talked about. When you know you've lost on the facts, you just resort to yelling, well, you're just mean.
Exactly. And this is a classic logical fallacy, right? It's ad hominem. You attack the person making the argument instead of the argument itself. It's a defense mechanism, a way to dodge the real issue.
And you see it play out perfectly here. Instead of debating the tricky subject of their effective jurisdiction over Taiwan, which they can't win, they pivot to debating the moral character of this Japanese politician.
And it's not a one-off thing. Major news outlets have been tracking this pattern for years.
That's right. Analysis from places like The Economist and The New York Times has noted this shift in Chinese diplomatic language. When they're faced with these really sticky contradictions about sovereignty or geopolitics, The tone changes. It goes from the calm, rational bureaucrat talking about trade deficits to this, revolutionary critique of someone's moral corruption.
The message becomes, your argument is invalid because you are a bad person.
Precisely. And that's why we think this isn't just a spokesperson having a bad day. This is a repeatable protocol, a kind of script they run when their core narrative is challenged by reality.
Okay, so let's break that down. Let's call it the CCP logic fail protocol. What are the steps in this reboot sequence?
We've identified 3 key steps that we see time and time again when the official story hits a factual wall.
Let's start with step 1, dimensionality reduction. What does that mean?
It's about simplifying the debate to a level where they can win. So Seki Hei presents a complex 3-dimensional problem involving international law, sovereignty, and actual border control. It's messy.
And they can't engage with that.
They can't. So they immediately reduce the argument down to a single, simple dimension, morality. The discussion is no longer about geopolitical reality. It's about whether Seki Hei is a good or bad person. He's scum.
They're changing the playing field from a chessboard to a wrestling match.
That's a great way to put it. They're moving the debate onto moral grounds where they control the terms, because they've already lost the factual debate about jurisdiction. If they can successfully brand him as morally bankrupt, then anything he says is automatically dismissed as just the noise a bad person makes.
It's an evasion tactic dressed up as moral superiority. Very clever. Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 is what we call causal cursing.
Causal cursing.
Yeah, it's this very specific rhetorical move. When they can't logically predict or threaten a specific political consequence, they resort to these vague, fate-based threats. It's almost quasi-religious.
So instead of saying, if you do this, we will impose these specific tariffs,
they say things like, he will be nailed to the pillar of shame in history, or those who play with fire will perish by it, or he will come to no good end.
It sounds like an ancient curse.
It basically is. It's substituting a real political consequence, which they often can't deliver in this situation, with a rhetorical one. It serves 2 purposes. Domestically, it reassures hardliners that the party is on the right side of history and that fate will take care of the bad guys.
And internationally.
Internationally, it's meant to sound ominous and threatening, but it's really just a stand-in for actual power they can't project.
It's all bark and no bite. Which leads us to the final step, the one that became a meme from this incident. Step 3, the refusal to debate.
Right. Lin Jian's famous line, not worthy of comment, or dosu. This is the ultimate rhetorical firewall.
Why did they use that specific phrase?
Because they are structurally unable to engage with the logical challenge. Think about it. How can a spokesperson for Beijing answer the question, if Taiwan is part of China, why can't you stop a man you've banned from going there?
They can't. There's no good answer.
There is no answer that doesn't undermine their core claim.
Yeah.
So they have to deploy a phrase that sounds like an elevated dismissive critique, like, oh, this is too silly to even discuss, when in reality, it's a signal that they have no counter-argument at all.
It's a performance of dismissal to hide a real logical dead end.
And the beautiful irony of this whole protocol is how spectacularly it backfires. The goal was to silence Seki Hei and assassinate his character.
But the result was the exact opposite.
The result was that the whole world saw how sensitive this issue is for them. The sheer volume and emotion of their reaction just confirmed to everyone that Seki Hei's simple experiment had successfully poked a huge, undeniable hole in their narrative.
It's that classic idiom, isn't it? The one that Akio Yaida, the guy who invited Seki Hei, used. He said China was lifting a rock only to drop it on its own foot.
They tried to crush the messenger, but the weight of their own over-the-top reaction ended up amplifying his message to the entire world. And this leads to this thing we're calling mood diplomacy.
Mood diplomacy.
Yeah, where a lack of logic is replaced with just raw emotion. The wolf warrior becomes a sulking wolf.
And the public picks up on that instantly. While Chinese state media was blasting out Lin Jian's quotes, what were the netizens doing?
They turned not worthy of comment into an instant meme. There were GIFs, jokes, punchlines everywhere.
Because it's so obviously a weak position. The subtext is clear. I have no real argument, so I'm just going to insult you.
Exactly. The moment the spokesperson took that awkward pause and then spat out scum, not worthy of comment, he kind of became the joke himself. It just proved that reacting too strongly is sometimes way more damaging than just staying quiet. It undermines the very image of power and control they're trying so hard to project.
Yeah, if you really controlled the situation, you wouldn't need to scream about it. You'd just control it.
Okay, so we've seen how the Seki Hei incident is a perfect little microcosm of a pattern we see in their diplomacy today. But if we zoom out, this whole idea of using moral rhetoric to paper over logical gaps isn't new at all. It's systemic.
Right. It's built into the very history and ideology of the CCP.
To really understand why they reacted this way, we have to look at the bigger historical contradictions they're constantly trying to manage.
So we're moving from the headline to the foundations. Let's talk about 4 major ideological conflicts where narrative control has had to replace logical consistency. Where should we start?
Let's start with the biggest one. Reconciling the party's own past with its present. This is known as the two cannots negate doctrine.
The two cannots negate doctrine. What does that mean?
It's a high-level policy that basically says the post-Mao era of economic reform cannot be used to negate or invalidate the Mao era. And just as importantly, the Mao era can't be used to negate the reform era.
Okay, but logically, that sounds impossible. How can you not negate one or the other? They seem like polar opposites.
They are. That's the ideological abyss they're trying to walk a tightrope over. Think about it. The Mao era included what the party itself now calls massive errors and disasters, especially the Cultural Revolution.
Which was years of political chaos, economic ruin, ideological purges.
Right. And then the reform era, started by Deng Xiaoping, was built entirely on the idea of undoing all of that, moving from paranoia to pragmatism, from class struggle to economic efficiency.
So you can't logically say, we made horrible mistakes that caused immense suffering, and in the same breath say, but we can't let those mistakes diminish the value of the period when they happened. That's a direct contradiction.
It's what some analysts call a double-bind self-consistency failure. They have to do it to maintain institutional continuity. If they question the Mao era too much, the entire foundation of their power starts to look shaky. So the result is a very specific kind of political language.
A linguistic tautology.
Right, exactly. A tautology is a statement that's true by definition, but gives you no new information. So instead of a real critical evaluation of the Cultural Revolution, the official language talks vaguely about its exploratory meaning as a difficult stage in building socialism.
It's a verbal magic trick. It's designed to keep different factions within the party happy. The old guard who revere Mao and the pragmatists who want to focus on the economy. But for anyone looking at it from the outside, it just makes historical analysis totally incoherent.
They're choosing unity over coherence. Which brings us to the second major contradiction. And this one is the hinge of modern China. Ideology versus economy after 1978.
This was the big philosophical switch. The Cultural Revolution's whole logic was politics in command. Ideological purity was everything, even if it meant people starved.
And the Reform era's logic was economics in command. Get rich. It doesn't matter if the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. These two ideas are fundamentally incompatible.
So to embrace the new logic, you have to admit the old one was a complete disaster.
And that's where the friction comes in. The party had to politically rehabilitate millions of people who were persecuted during the purges. They had to admit mistakes were made. But at the same time, they couldn't let that process discredit the party's overall historical narrative of being correct.
So they have to walk that same tightrope again. Apologize for the suffering, but at the same time insist that it was all part of a necessary exploratory path.
It's an amazing feat of narrative management. It forces people to hold two contradictory thoughts in their heads at the same time. This was a catastrophic mistake, and this was a valuable step forward guided by the party. That kind of messaging requires you to just turn off your rational brain and repeat the official line.
Okay, let's move to the third contradiction. This is one we see every single day with online censorship. The logic of control versus social memory, especially when it comes to the events of 1989 in Tiananmen Square.
This is a textbook example. The conflict is incredibly simple. The state's goal is the total suppression of public memory and discussion of those events. And that goal crashes directly into the persistent memory of society and the rest of the world.
The strategy is just to erase it. Censor the words, block the images, delete the date from search results. A literal attempt to remove it from history.
But the logical outcome is the complete opposite of what they intend. The act of censoring something so heavily just makes it more powerful. It creates stronger scrutiny from outside and fosters this whole internal subculture of coded language, jokes, and unofficial history.
It's that phenomenon, right? Eugene Yu Hong. The more you forbid something, the more popular it becomes.
Exactly. By making it forbidden, they've turned it into this powerful cultural symbol for anyone who wants to think independently. It's a self-defeating logical failure that plays out every single year.
And finally, let's talk about the historical contradiction that's most relevant to Seki Hei's plane ticket. The claim about sovereignty versus UN Resolution 2758.
This is a huge one. Beijing consistently claims that this UN resolution from 1971 definitively settled the Taiwan sovereignty question in their favor.
But the actual text of the resolution is very specific, isn't it?
Incredibly specific. And this is where diplomatic language really matters. The reality is, the resolution only dealt with one thing. Who gets China's seat at the United Nations? It decided that the government of the People's Republic of China would be the one to hold that seat, kicking out the government of the Republic of China, which was then on Taiwan.
So what did the resolution not say?
It said nothing about the ultimate sovereignty of the territory of Taiwan. It simply said the PRC was the only lawful representative of China to the United Nations. It kicked one government out of the building, but was very careful not to make a declaration about the legal status of the island itself.
That silence is a massive logical loophole.
A loophole that international actors use all the time. Whether it's the U.S. State Department or a Japanese MP, they use that factual gap to challenge Beijing's claim that the issue is a settled matter. It allows for strategic ambiguity.
Seki Hei's genius was taking that abstract legal ambiguity and turning it into a real-world experiment with a passport stamp.
He weaponized the failure of their historical narrative to dictate present reality. When you look at these four contradictions, you see that the anger over Seki Hei isn't just about him or about Taiwan. It's about a whole system of self-consistency failures that the party has to constantly manage with emotion and rhetoric.
So, to bring this all together and wrap up our deep dive, the pattern seems pretty clear.
It really is. When Beijing's internal logic can't hold up, when one of these contradictions is exposed by a simple, verifiable fact, like a border control test, the system defaults to intense emotional output. The disciplined wolf warrior becomes what we've been calling the sulking wolf.
Full of anger and moral condemnation because the facts aren't on their side.
And the big takeaway here is that Seki Hei's move was so successful because he used the simplest weapon there is, reality. He didn't get into a complicated debate about history or law. He just planned to demonstrate a fact.
His ability to freely enter Taiwan versus a very complex and, as we've seen, very flawed ideological claim.
And the irony is just perfectly captured in the insult they chose. Lin Jian said Seki Hei was not worthy of comment.
And then immediately proceeded to comment on him in the strongest possible terms, using words like scum and vile. The sheer emotional energy they spent condemning him was completely out of proportion with their claim that he was irrelevant.
It's the ultimate tell. The huge effort to convince the world that his trip was trivial only proved how threatening they actually found it. Their reaction magnified his importance tenfold.
Which brings us to our final provocative question for you, our listeners, to think about. This diplomatic style of cursing, of personalized insults, of ad hominem attacks, does it actually project strength and deterrence on the world stage?
Or does this brittle, easily triggered diplomacy just end up hurting their own cause? Does it signal to the rest of the world that they can't engage on the facts and that their narrative is more fragile than they want anyone to believe?
That's a question at the heart of so much of modern geopolitics. We, of course, are just here to provide the facts and the analysis for you to discuss. Our goal is always to be objective, without prejudice toward any country or group of people.
We just want to encourage independent thinking.
And we really hope you found this look at the logic failure protocol to be useful.
If you want to keep up with more of our conversations here at Sip&Talk, please make sure you hit that subscribe button.
And we also want to give a quick shout out to our good friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life, for great memes and fun travel vlogs.
Definitely check it out.
We'll see you next time.